2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. How cool is this? You develop a multisensory product to let people experience your ideas about music thinking, and then someone comes along and uses your product for something completely different. Okay, before we dive into our conversation, let's first explain what are the jam cards, because that's the product we're talking about today. The jam cards are a set of 38 inspiration plus 6 cue cards in the size of a 45 or single record. They're actually very big cards, approximately 5 times the size of a regular card deck. So if you take 5 cards, put them together, and then you have the idea from, hey, wow, that's one jam card. And all the inspiration cards have multiple triggers. For example, a keyword that sums up the essence of the card, and an interesting key visual with music-related snapshots or excerpts from paintings from the Rijksmuseum. There's also a trigger question to spark and divert your thinking, and an inspirational quote from musicians like Brian Eno, Jimi Hendrix or Frank Zappa, and some non-musicians like Florence Nightingale or even Steve Jobs. So brilliant quotes that stand out and make you think. And very unique, every card has a sound trigger. You can scan and hear immediately a specific song or sometimes also a spoken word on the Spotify platform. So the Music Thinking Jam cards, so they're an inspirational card set for change makers, pattern recognizers, innovators, transformers, and natural collaborators. Yeah, because we all need extra inspiration. Use the jam cards to trigger your ideation session, co-create your purpose, define your design challenge, or lay the foundation of your company's culture or brand story. So, and for over 5 years, the jam cards have been available from your local book dealer or online dealers like Amazon. So, many creative sessions and brainstorms have been taken with them, but today we speak with Anita Prestidge, an English trainer with experience in theater, directing, and education. And when Anita picked up the cards, she had another idea of what to do with these cards and developed her own unique method. So let's hear more about it. Welcome, Anita. Welcome to the Power of Music Thinking.
Thank you.
What was your first sonic experience or record album, or performance that had an impact on you?
Yeah, I have wrestled with this question since I first heard it, actually. And I wouldn't say it's maybe my first sonic experience, but it's certainly the one that comes to mind most frequently is my father had a collection, not a huge collection, a small collection of records, but I would listen to them over and over again. So like the Mamas and the Papas and John Denver and some musicals, which I didn't think he was a musical guy, but he had some musicals. And I would listen to them ad nauseum and really embody them. So,
and which one stood out?
Yeah. I really liked Angel of the Morning,
which was, I don't know this.
Completely inappropriate for a small child, but I loved it, so I would sing it over and over again.
Angel of the Morning. It's sung by.
That's a good question.
We can look it up. So
yeah,
but if you would remember, so it's is it a song or is it?
Yeah, it's a song. So she says, "Just call me angel of the morning, angel." And so I think it's, she's talking to him about the morning after hooking up.
Ah,
This is what I used to sing as a
it's a
child.
very famous song, but I also forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
cool.
only other one would be Man of La Mancha. My mom worked at a university, and so she told, I think it was 4. She took me to Man of La Mancha, and she was so embarrassed because I cried and I cried, but I loved it. So it was so idealistic and tragic, and yeah.
Do you remember why you cried? What made you?
I think it was just sort of the exquisite pain and beauty and tragedy that he had these dreams, and he was maybe not going to realize them, but he was going to go after them anyway. At least that's what I remember. It's been a while since I've actually seen the show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Very, yeah, a strange child maybe, but that's what I remember.
Oh, every child is different. So,
Yeah.
and Man from La Mancha, I think it's even they show it here at the moment as well. So I think it's
Oh, do they?
so it looks or it sounds like it's from all time. So it's like
Yeah.
stories that, and also what you just said, visions, and
Mm-hmm.
fighting the windmills, right? Is it Don Quixote?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Don
fighting
Quixote.
windmills, yeah, that's something that we also do or have to do. Or
Yeah. And you don't necessarily go in because you're going to win, but you have to do it.
and there's love involved. So there
Yeah,
sounds like they're
exactly.
universal
Yeah.
stories. Will you just introduce yourself? What do you do for a living?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been an educator in a lot of different capacities. And during COVID, I realized that I needed to switch gears from music and theater a little bit. And I got certified as an English trainer for English as a foreign language. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years.
And we spoke before, maybe half a year, and
Yeah.
you explained me that you're using some interesting tools.
Yeah. So my partner, who you also had on your show, Mike Vondernamer, got a set of the jam cards. Let me see if I have the box here. Yeah. We have the jam cards because I was looking for something a little more creative to bring into my class, into the trainings, and I just found it absolutely perfect. So generally, what I do, and initially it was just a conversation starter. It's a common activity to have language learners describe a picture. It was certainly in my German integration course that I had to describe pictures and that sort of thing. But then I found that the questions and the quotes were really helpful in getting into a deeper conversation and not just the rote conversations that you learn when you're beginning a new language, which can also be helpful, but I think frustrating, especially for adult learners who are used to communicating on a different level. So it also created, I was looking for a really good framework. So it immediately made sense to me, the different pillars of listen, tune, play, and perform. And I thought, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. And with the jam cards, then I created a sort of curriculum. So I did my research and looked at the various frequencies of the different words in the English language and organized them using your jamming and empathy. I started with empathy. A lot of people didn't necessarily have a good experience. Their first experience of learning a language was not necessarily positive, so I felt we really needed to start in an open atmosphere. And of course, we start with listen.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So usually we define the word and try to create sort of a word cloud of everything that could be related to listen.
Are they
And
one-on-one sessions, or is it a group?
yeah, these are almost always one-on-one sessions. I do work with a team, and we have done workshops, and of course with other platforms I've done classwork, but generally I'm working one-on-one or in small groups.
Mm-hmm.
I would
And
say.
would it be more for conversation, or is it just like, how do we reach people out to you, like from, hey, wow, I had English in school and
Yeah.
I'm not using it too much. Can you help me? Or what kind of questions do they come to?
Yeah, so generally people understand a lot of the basics. They got a lot of English in school as children, and now English is really the international language at the moment. And so a lot of people are finding that they just don't feel comfortable. They're having a difficult time transferring their expertise in their native language to English. They don't feel that they can have free speech, that they're really nervous, or they're not expressing themselves the way they would like. So this is a way, I would say, a minimum of 3 to 4 sessions. I would say just those 45, 50-minute sessions. And so the first one is really all about listening. And I'm
How do you do this? So
Yeah.
how would this work? So if I would be your what is it, student, and would say,
Yeah.
that's the first lesson. So how would we start? How would you explain this to me?
Yeah, so our first lesson, I usually give them a little bit about my background. My degree is in music and theater, and I also homeschooled my older children, as well as working in a special education school. So I'm very flexible in how I think about learning, but I also like structure. And as an adult learner, I want to see progress. I want to know that I'm improving, and I want it to be efficient because, of course, we want the skill now. So the first thing we do is we go to Spotify. If they have it on their phones, then they can listen to it. And
how do they do? Do they understand that they can scan the code?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I explain. I'll hold it up. Otherwise, oftentimes we're in Teams or something, or Zoom, and they can scan it right off the screen. I ask questions about the music. I ask questions: what do they hear? How do they think it relates to the word? Can they think of a situation where they needed to listen? So it's a little bit of a Rorschach test, but for vocabulary, because I just want to pull out. Most clients say, I just can't think of the word in the moment.
Good point.
Even if they're learning a vocabulary list, I can't think of it in the moment. And so I give them lots of opportunities to practice that skill of finding the right word in the moment.
It's contextual, so like getting into a situation, trying to find everything that connects to it, and then try to learn the words. And with listen, that's funny. There's a different word for hearing. So in German, for example, it's hören und zuhören. So then the listen part is only as a prefix. So every language is different and has its own context.
Yeah, exactly. And while we do conduct the majority of the meeting in English, I do think it's important to make those connections, those bridges to what you've already learned, so that it just is more integral into your system. And there's different senses of listen that I'm listening for things. I'm mostly listening for patterns. I'm not listening for every little mistake, because even as a native speaker, I make mistakes in English, hopefully not a lot. But our emphasis is really on communication and feeling that you're expressing yourself in the way that you want to.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, not trying to be too focused on being perfect, but just make a conversation, just talk with people. And if it's the wrong word, and sometimes people help you and say, oh, I think you mean this, and that was the right word. So it's also
Yeah.
being also a little bit being open,
Hmm.
vulnerable to say, okay, this is what I think, and how you can help me. So for me,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really really funny that you, let's say, found the gem cards, because
Yeah.
in the beginning, when I created them, I never thought that you can use them for English lessons. So that,
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. When I heard that, this was
Hmm.
cool. On the other hand, the gem cards are made. It's not a game, so there is
Right.
nothing where you can work to. So it's actually more a creative tool.
Hmm.
And just I also in the top of the box there,
Yeah.
the publishers ask me, okay, you can't just put the cards in the box, you have to explain how it works. And then I thought,
Hmm.
how would this work? So I would something like a serendipity lab. So
Right.
sometimes in workshops, when so let everyone use headphones, and then together they scan the codes from Spotify. And the idea
Hmm.
is what you just said: to find patterns, and find
Yeah.
patterns that you not have recognized yet. Pattern
Hmm.
between the music and the backside. So fantastic. So
Yeah.
so listening is your start, the start card.
Yeah. So that's where we start. And then I have them describe the picture. And again, some of them uh, don't have a musical vocabulary. So right away, I can introduce the idea that this is a good space to make mistakes. This
Mm.
is a good space not to know the answer. Um, One, I would be out of a job if you knew all the answers. But also, it's really about the process. How I think we learn is having that beginner's mind of, yes, let's make mistakes. And I really find it interesting when I see the patterns in mistakes and I say, oh, this skill is a little tricky for you. I know you know the theory, but let's figure out why you're not putting it into practice and how we can do that. And that's individual for everybody. So, and that's really exciting for me. And once they understand that, I think most of my clients really get into say, oh, okay, I can make mistakes in this space. And I really like what you said about not being goal oriented. And that's really sometimes it's a big ask for adult learners not to have a goal, especially in language. And of course, we all want to communicate, but at least in my generation, there was a goal when we were taught language that we would get a certain number of vocabulary words or we would get a certain grade on the test. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you want to transfer those skills that you had in school to a real live situation, that can be it can really impede the it can make people anxious and they're having like three different thoughts, not just what they want to communicate, but am I communicating it in the right way? Oh, I did the wrong grit. Oh, so yeah, so just by putting them in a situation where they don't necessarily know the words, but of course they're listening to music, I've been very pleasantly surprised. I don't think I've had one person that says, I don't really listen to music. They listen to something.
Mm.
It may not be what I listen to, but they listen to something. And so I think that really adds a level of authenticity to our space and even vulnerability, which I think you need if you want to learn a new skill.
Absolutely. And music is also a connector with empathy. It's also
Hmm.
easy to use. It's easy to share.
Hmm.
I recognized in sessions that I'm doing that people talk about music, but later they realize, well, hey, hang on, there is so much subtone, undercurrent in it. But
Hmm.
way we talk about music, we can share actually the way how we think and how we work.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to really, I've been really interested in how we transfer skills, especially when people, not everyone, some of my clients were not good students, but some of them were. And how do we transfer that skill into a work situation? So we can talk about listening generally. Often we talk about our personal experience with listen, but then I always push them to consider, how do we listen in this situation? How do we listen in that situation? If I just think about myself, moving to Germany has been really interesting. There are times when I just let the language wash over me, especially in the beginning, because I didn't understand that much and I couldn't hyper focus on every single word. And then someone will ask me a question and I have a stutter and I think, did they ask it in German or English? Which language am I going to answer in? If it's in German, do I really understand what the question is? And so on. And so I find, in addition to that vulnerability, we also get to practice different kinds of focus. So are we hyper focusing on just one speaker, on just one language? Is our focus diffuse? Or are we switching focus? I've been interested in that visually as well, of just practicing switching focus. And it's something that I certainly need to practice a lot. And I find that language and using the jam cards allows us to do that.
Yeah, that's also in a way multisensory, because the cards, you can look at them, but you also can hold them in your hand or more of them in your hand, make combinations. You can listen to it. And how does it work? Do you do it online? So then the people don't have the cards, so you show the card?
Yeah. So I do have a couple of clients that went out and got their own cards, which is always fun. And because then they can really look through the whole stack and see what they like. But generally, I have a PowerPoint and then I have it as well, because I think it's important to notice the tactile. That even if you're just watching someone else, then you can get a slight sense of, oh, we're touching something now. You can empathize and sort of, in some way, feel what they're feeling.
Yeah, that's to hear that they have the cards is very, very, very nice. And for also in the sense that they can find their own story. So that's serendipity. So that not knowing. A friend of mine, he did a speech for his company, and he used the jam cards. So. And was holding one by one. So then it was about listening or entrainment. And he was using all these words and showed this. And this was for people very nice. It was then not a PowerPoint in the background, but using cards and the gem cards. And he was using them as prompts as well. So it's also like, okay, he knows what to talk about. So that's, nice. But again, so you start with the listening card. And maybe we have to share with people, the gem cards are 38 plus 6 cards. The 38 cards, I call them the prompt cards. So they have a picture, they have a keyword, they have a Spotify link. On the backside, there's a question, a quote from a musician. Most of them are musicians. So
yes, except for Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, and
that
also
surprised me.
Nightingale, the nurse.
Oh yes, Florence Nightingale.
So sometimes I thought when preparing them. So when the quote was really, really, really perfect, so I thought. It's also what I want with music thinking. It's not only about musicians, and that's the idea. It's everybody can work with these cards or can work with music thinking, but the thinking behind that comes from music. But anyway, it helps you just to do whatever you do. And so these are 38 cards, and every card has its own story, also the picture and the music. And there are 6 cards, and they relate to the framework, like jamming and empathy, score, agility, remix, and personality. And some combine with each other. But the funny thing is, I did not give instructions for the cards, because I think, let everybody use the cards how they want to use them.
I did arrange the cards using I don't know what you call them, the different categories that you have. So I did arrange them by that, and then I went by word frequency, and then sometimes also about the length of the quote on the back or the vocabulary.
Oh, really?
It depends on what level of language people have. If they're just starting out, we have to adjust it a little more. But if they're in the conversational level, then
is there a favorite card or a card? You just said you always start with listening, so I would say
I do always start with listening. I really like activity is really interesting. Anytime there's not a super direct translation, of course you can, because English is sometimes, we can of course be very specific, but we also have a lot of terms for generalities. So we can talk about activity as a general term, whereas in some languages it's a very specific term. Whereas in English we make it specific by adding something to it. Yeah, or just bringing up words that they hadn't necessarily considered in this context, that they had heard in one context, and then we move it to another is really, I think, challenging. I always like it when it's a little challenging, because then you know you're actually learning something without being difficult or damaging. In some people's cases, had very hard experiences in school. So I'm always, how can we find that sweet spot of it being enjoyable but still challenging?
Talking about the cards and the quotes in the beginning, and I have to tell, the Jam cards, they are available worldwide, just in the bookstore or Amazon. And in the beginning, I made on my blog explanations about the Jam cards. So about where the picture is taken, something about music, and I stopped with it. So because I never got feedback, so I thought, okay, that's good. But the one, let's say the one page that has the most traffic on musicthinking.com is the one about listen, but there's one reason. So I checked in the analytics, and it's about the quote of Jimi Hendrix. That's on the back of the card. So knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. And that's really something. People come via this quote, and they want to know who said this quote. And it's in that way also very surprising that Jimi Hendrix, one of the biggest guitarists that ever lived, has this quote. Is there another?
I have to. I mean, talking about the listen card, I have to say that is one of the best pairings, because if you think about, I mean, would Hendrix be Hendrix without all that feedback from the sound system? And the idea of listening to the signal within the noise, which is maybe a little hard concept to understand in in a foreign language, but once we get there, they think, oh yeah, just like when I was talking about when I'm in a room full of German speakers, I don't necessarily try to listen to every single conversation. I'm just letting there be noise. So I really have to applaud you for your choice of music for that card, because you really have to listen to hear his music through all the sound.
Nice. Yeah. Sometimes I once had a workshop where someone came to me and said, "Oh, there's something wrong with the card because it doesn't fit to the picture." And for me, that's maybe the best compliment, because I had some ideas why to put what music together with what picture, but sometimes it's like a little bit thinking around the corner, and actually the idea is not to necessarily understand why I pick this. The idea is, so what do you make out of it? And that was the nice part when I asked him, what would you expect then? And even more interesting to find out what in this case he would expect it, what kind of music would be on the backside. Is there a part where people react like something like, oh, this music, that doesn't resonate with me?
Sometimes Dolly Parton, which is a little hard for me because she's my go-to when I'm feeling homesick. Just because they're not country fans. And I think, oh, you got to listen to Dolly. She's such a good storyteller.
And it's the best quote ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, find out who you are and do it on purpose. So talking on purpose. And I like all these purpose discussions sometimes in organizations. It's really like, find out who you are. And that's already where you could go to. So,
yeah, well, and it's super important when I'm talking to teams that are trying to buff up their English so they can do that international, have international meetings and communicate that way, because they really have to think, what is the actual purpose of the meeting? We talk about what is the purpose of your company, what is the purpose of the role, and when you can really distill that into words in your second or third language, that's really powerful. That gives you, that gives you a power going into and a confidence going into any meeting that, I know why I'm here, I know what I can do, and I know what I need to ask.
Nice. Okay, so is there anything you would like to point out, or maybe a story where it worked perfect or it went completely wrong?
I would say I have had, let's see, I think everyone has been really pleasantly surprised, because I have not yet included the jam cards on my profiles where and then they come to the first session and I say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe I'm going to be into this. And so that's really gratifying. And there have been a few that I think maybe they just needed to work on their grammar, or they weren't quite ready to be vulnerable. I'm happy for whatever language level they're at, but if someone is feeling too self-conscious and not ready to make mistakes, not ready to see where the road goes, if they're still in that section where they want step by step, I'm happy to help them transition to a more open way of communicating and thinking, but not everyone's ready for that, and that's okay.
Nice. And any favorite card besides that? Do you always start with listening? Is there a card where that resonates with you, or maybe a disturbing one where you say, "Oh, that kind of music is annoying me or giving me questions"?
Yeah, maybe the model one irritated me a little bit.
Okay, the model. I think the music is from Kraftwerk on the other side, right? And it's the quote of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that was a Steve Jobs quote, and mostly just because I think of model in so many other ways, and I felt like the music was really making me think in only one way. People always see a different model in the picture.
Yeah.
I've gotten at least 4 different answers of what is the model in the picture, which I find really fascinating.
Maybe there are 4 or 5 models in the picture.
Yeah. So that's always, and it's just interesting. I always have to train myself every time I get a new client, because I'm just so excited to meet someone else and figure out how they think and how they learn. And hear their stories. So it's really
nice.
exciting
and you're
for
looking
me.
at the same thing, and everybody sees something different.
Yeah. So it's really enjoyable for me. I'm very happy that it was very serendipitous to this whole journey, I have to say.
That was the idea about it.
Yeah, very good. You have achieved it.
Is there anything that you would like to share or maybe ask about the cards?
Maybe not about the cards. I'm really curious if any of your listeners actually have experience or know of an article or research that's being done between speech and song. I think there might be a way to. I've read a couple articles about music therapy, some from musicologists, some from linguists, but I think there's something there that could be really applicable to learning language.
Absolutely.
So I would be curious if anyone had any suggestions
Yeah,
for my
let's ask
next,
that
because I
question.
have to keep learning too. If I get stuck, I forget what it's like to learn. So I love that journey.
I can imagine that there's some research, and I think we had it in one or two of the podcasts
Mhm.
where we talk about let's say that's the intro question. What was
Mhm.
most memorable? Let's say the first song that you ever heard, and
Uh-huh.
I recognized this that some people really like a song and they heard it when they're very young, and
Mhm.
but didn't understand the words.
Yeah.
And later just find, oh my God, that song is about this or that.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting part. And on
Mhm.
the other hand, some of the lyrics in music, they are very vague. So it's
Mhm.
like a poem or something associative that they and that it also just sounds good, because
Mhm.
it's the idea of a song that you can sing with it and that it makes you feel in a
Mhm.
way, and that words are maybe more than just what they what they mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll find that a lot in poetry. That's certainly been my feeling, is that there is a rightness to some poetry, and exploring that rightness gives you the meaning. Uh, I'm I'm very curious of what I'm going to discover.
Nice. And that's also the serendipity, so it's not about
Hmm.
what it really means, but it may be what it means to you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for sharing your story and for me, incredible thing, using the cards that I've intended for creative interaction and serendipity.
Yeah.
That you use it as a
Well, thank
tool.
you for creating them. They've been really a lifesaver. I think any teacher would be happy, especially maybe high school or university level. Um, there are days when you can't plan everything, and then you can just pull out the cards and say, let's ask some questions, let's talk and have a conversation.
It's like improvisation, just
It is.
or business improvisation triggered by patterns on cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get us out of our silos.
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this, because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email, podcast@musicthinking.com.